Going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Blended Learning Grant LASO Cycle 4 webinar. We are going to talk through all things Blended Learning Grant. With us today, my name is Brian Dorn. I'm the Director of Expanded Learning Models. Mike Strange is also here. You'll hear predominantly from him today as he talks through ins and outs of the Blended Learning Grant program. On the agenda, I'll give a quick overview of the LASO Cycle 4 application process and timeline, and then Mike will take us through Blended Learning Grant Deep Dive. We'll close out with next steps. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A feature. We will get to what we're able to today, and then also recognize that some of these questions we might need to take back and answer on our FAQ to make sure that we have everything 100% correct for you. Rest assured, we will be taking a look at all those questions that are popped into the Q&A feature, whether we answer it live or not. The slides and the recordings will be posted on the LASO Cycle 4 website after all the webinars have completed, sometime in the next week or so. And then you can email lasso@tea.texas.gov with any follow-up questions. So I'll kick us off with a quick overview of LASO Cycle 4. LASO is the Learning Acceleration Support Opportunities Consolidated Grant Application. This year, we're excited. We have 15 different initiatives that support learning acceleration and innovation. And this is representing approximately $500 million in estimated supports and services across these 15 initiatives. And all of these can be accessed through one application to help simplify that process through the LASO Cycle 4 application process. LASO itself focuses on 4 key learning acceleration strategies: curriculum and instruction, education and training, more time, and innovative school models. So each of the 15 different initiatives within LASO will help you address one of those different learning acceleration strategies. We're, of course, here focused on Blended Learning Grant. And so if you are interested in the overall LASO 4 portfolio, I encourage you to take a look at this slide. This will be posted on the LASO 4 website as well. And you can help get a quick understanding of what each grant opportunity is offering, the duration, how much is the actual award, and the number of estimated awards that we have available. So kind of a one-stop shop there for you. So before we jump into the Blended Learning Deep Dive, I want to set the scene from a data standpoint and just taking a look at some of the student outcomes that we've seen across the state recently. So first for reading, I believe we have first. Based off of STAR performance level, only about 50% of our grade 3 through 8 students in Texas are reading on grade level. And we've seen, instead of steady growth over the last couple of years, we've seen kind of a stagnation of that progress, maybe a slight growth, but overall we need to be doing a little bit more to help our students make sure that they're reading on grade level. Similar story for math, where on the next slide, there we go. We haven't yet recovered to pre-COVID levels. Honestly, we still have work to do even from pre-COVID levels. And so these components really help us understand like there's work to be done. And these are the founding data points that serve as our why for why we're looking at different learning acceleration strategies through LASO. And one of those strategies, conveniently enough, is Blended Learning Grant. And so I will turn it over to Mike to talk us through that.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so for blended learning, we kind of the tried and true version, if you will, for folks to just understand, like trying to meet the needs of all students is a challenge, as we know, being teachers or former teachers, and that kids come from various backgrounds. And so depending on their knowledge gaps for that standard or that subject, they could be in different places here, either advanced, proficient, on the fence, or struggling. So depending on the curriculum where you're at that day, depends on where those kids are in that lesson. And so trying to find a way so that knowing where kids are, one, and then differentiating that content for kids where they're at, it can be very, very difficult. And so ultimately, what we're trying to provide here with the Blended Learning Grant is to avoid this teaching from the middle, which is in that traditional whole group lesson instruction. How can we get to each of the kids' needs, knowing that it's just one teacher, so it's nearly impossible to do that by themselves. And so to do that, there needs to be a change in the system. And so we're going to talk about that and then dive a little deeper in a second. But ultimately, for blended learning, we address The biggest part is in the curriculum. How can you tie the tier one curriculum with some sort of a diagnostic or a regular formative assessment to then inform the tier two curriculum for that immediate reteach or on-demand instruction and independent study for kids. And in addition to that, then also looking at knowing that other things have to change within the system. The master scheduling, so that kids actually have time for that tier two reteach independent study. Training and coaching for teachers and instructional staff, as well as maybe an overall staffing pattern, which we'll talk about with strategic operations here in a second. So just a quick reminder about what blended learning is for us here at TEA. One, it's blending two things. One is the online instruction. So a quick diagnosis of where kids are, differentiating them within the lesson and giving them that immediate or instant feedback for adjustment in real time. And then two is the face-to-face with the teacher. The best part of the teacher is that human flexibility, that human interaction with kids, both from like an emotional standpoint, and then also like really diving into what is it that they need to know next, and knowing that each kid's a little bit different in that. So putting those two things together is that blended learning curriculum. And what that looks like for us from the tier two side, that software side, is allowing the software to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the teacher in terms of the diagnosis and the customized pathway. Because again, they're just one person, and they got a lot going on in the classroom, a lot of kids that need needs, and they can't do all those things themselves. If you allow the software to do some of that mastery and differentiation, then the teacher can quickly take those groupings of students and get them what they need in that small group time. Ultimately looking something like this. This is kind of an idea of like a lab rotation, which we'll talk about later on today. But knowing that I have that group of kids that I need to get small group target instruction with, and then those other students can be on the software getting their differentiated pathways. Now, in addition to that, we also have a second cohort called strategic operations. We'll talk more about in a little bit. But that's thinking through, if you are a district that's already been through blended learning and you've gotten down the classroom model of tier one and tier two instruction, and we're trying to think of a bigger impact we can make. How can we use a blended model to address a larger operational shift issue? And we have three approaches with that. One is, how can we get more kids to that teacher leader for that grade level? Two is, maybe we want to do more of a mentorship to build capacity of our younger teachers or teachers that haven't been certified yet and working on that pathway, so that co-teaching mentorship, or that schedule and staffing optimization, especially in your smaller districts where there may only be one third grade math teacher. So thinking through, how can we kind of create some more staffing positions with a blended model approach, so that we can give that teacher flexibility. And in all of these approaches, the biggest focus here is getting a larger impact for that teacher leader, your veteran teachers, your best teachers, with that targeted instruction from the tier two software. Some results from this previous school year are very promising. On the right side is our RLA, our reading instruction. So the non-BL campuses there, a little over 8,000 campuses versus just our BL RLA campuses, 88. And we see pretty good growth between from 24 to 25 school year, and the same in math. In math, there's actually three charts here. The non-BL campuses versus our blended learning MIZ campuses, Math Innovation Zone campuses, positive growth there. And then even on that third one, our Math Innovation Zone designated campuses. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this webinar, but those are ones that have proven to do all of the work of the grant and show software fidelity. And so there's no surprise here that they had the largest growth out of everybody. For research purposes, we use Texas Tech, have had them for several years now, and they came out just, I think, 2 years ago with a policy brief. So for those that are interested, you can go in and find those policy briefs there through the webinar, or you can just find them online. And four briefs that have shown us not only the positive effects for blended learning from like a student experience and teacher experience, but then also data from COVID stating that, everyone had a dip, but there was even a larger positive influence through blended learning. So for the rest of our time here, we will talk about the grant in one of two ways, either the academic cohort or the strategic operations cohort. And then at the very end, we'll say like there are some things that happen in both. But for the academic cohort, you're going to select in your application one or the other. You cannot do both. For academic, these are for districts that have not previously done blended learning through TEA and are looking to launch and design a high quality blended learning model through either math, reading, or both, and using HQIM material. For strategic operations, these are only open to our districts that have previously done blended learning through TEA and are looking to do a larger operational shift, leveraging their blended model and thinking through how can we optimize our campus staffing models for teachers, ultimately giving us the biggest bang for our buck academically for our students. So academic cohort, you'll see that green icon as we go through these slides here, and as you review them later on, that's how you'll differentiate between the two. Criteria, these are for folks that have previously completed or currently in LASO 3 Strong Foundations implementation, as well as LASO 2 and LASO 1. Our scoring and prioritization is here. We're starting with LASO 2 folks, so they've already done a full year and now into their second year. LASO 3 are just starting, and then LASO 1. We also have a few other priority tiers as we work down the list until our funding runs out for the academic cohort when we're awarding. And then our overall grant timeline is here. So this LASO 4 grant is actually just a 1-year grant, but it does provide then opportunities for a continuation year in 27-28 and a second continuation year in 28-29. So a possibility of 3 funded years, assuming that at the end of each year that the grantee has satisfactory grant requirements, whether it be health score, like overall just running through the grant and doing the things that you need to do for the grant side, as well as that software fidelity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. As far as your overall scaling out, this first year, the 26-27 school year, you'll pilot with at least 3 grade levels between K and 8. The second year, that continuation year 1, you'll fill out the rest of the grade levels, so you'll be fully K-8 for math and or reading, and then year 2 continue on with that participation. At the end of each year, you have that ability for that MIZ designated status. Again, we'll talk more about that at the end, but ultimately, are you doing everything for the grant requirements as well as the software fidelity? To give you a little insight of what this would look like this next spring, once the grantees are awarded, we will go through a rigorous fidelity of planning process. We'll walk you through all the different steps of starting from overall vision into the different infrastructure and scheduling, and then ultimately your professional learning for the summer so that teachers and leaders are ready to go on this 26-27 school year. And then in the end, what we look for then once you start to implement, the big 2 things that we look at is 1, did you have enough time and are students using the tier 2 software with fidelity in your blended model? 2, we have a monthly observation rubric where campus leaders can give feedback to teachers and kind of see where we at in our progress. And then ultimately at the end of the year, we have a BL defense where as a district, you can say, here's our goals at the beginning of the year, here's our artifacts leading up to it, and here's where we're at right now. We still have some room for growth, and here's where we think year 2 will take us. The other cohort is, of course, strategic operations. Again, the shift and focus here is more at a operational shift level. So one of the pieces of data we've used from our prep program, strategic staffing, is this one here, and that is pretty important to look at and notice that our uncertified teachers from way back in 2014, 15 till now has increased dramatically. And school districts, it is what it is. You need to hire good adults, and sometimes they're not certified, but you got to get them in and then get them certified. And so we feel like in the strategic operations, this is one of those ways to introduce these teachers that are maybe paraprofessionals, maybe they've been in the school system, but they just didn't get their certification before, or they're a brand new teacher coming in and they're an emergency certified, or maybe they are certified, but they're in the first year and they're still trying to figure out how to work their way into the school system. And so what we want to provide then is a new way to think about operational shifts and staffing for teachers. Ultimately, going away from the status quo, which is you're now the teacher in classroom 4, you've got these 100 kids, here's the curriculum, we'll be around to help you, opposed to now thinking through the strategic operations model of there's still this teacher leader, but now they're going to take the bulk of the tier 1 instruction. And now you as the associate teacher may be only in charge of a smaller portion of the lesson, maybe just the collaboration time or the independent time. Maybe it's just like in a lab rotation, the software. You're still a part of the daily instruction, but you're just not taking that heavy burden of the full learning cycle. And again, there's a couple of different approaches for this that we'll talk through. One is reaching more students and that target instruction overall, the teacher leader taking more of that role where the associate teachers are there. But again, they're not doing that tier 1 instruction. The co-teaching mentorship where that tier 1 instruction is maybe happening together with the associate teacher in a larger classroom. And then that staffing and scheduling optimization where there's more some sort of a rotational shift between students or teachers. So that you're able to free up that teacher leader to go in to other classrooms. To see a better view of this, we have aligned this with strategic staffing. They have several models. We've only aligned it one per each of our approaches here. And so for the Reach for More Students, we've aligned that to that team teaching approach, and you can see that link there in the deck. I do want to note that there's no requirement to be a part of the strategic staffing initiative. For this, we're just using this as an alignment kind of educational purposes to kind of get a visual for what this could look like. That's already happening at TEA. Second is that co-teaching approach where for strategic staffing, we align that to the pair teaching model there, and you'll see that video again on the link. Ultimately thinking through more of a mentorship model to build capacity for teachers that are there or young teachers that are coming in. And then that staffing optimization is very similar to the release time support from strategic staffing. Thinking through, again, how can we be more efficient with the allocation of all of your FTEs. Criteria for strategic operations, these are grantees that have previously done one of the blended learning grants, so LASO 2 last year, whether math or reading, LASO 1 from the year prior, math or reading, or any of our previous grantees from prior to that. I do want to make that one more at the bottom there, that rationale, like we want to make sure that we have districts that are very familiar with blended learning, understand how tier 1 and tier 2 work in concert with each other before you start making these other systematic shifts. It can be very difficult to try to do both at the same time. So that's why we only open it up to these folks here. Scoring criteria. Let me get my face out of my way there. Here we go. Scoring criteria. So Board of Managers, we want to open this to the districts that have the biggest need first. So Board of Managers are there if they want to apply. Then we move down to think through, again, proving that as a district you have worked out your blended model and you know that you can meet the software fidelity master schedule before we making these larger operational shifts. So the way we do this is there's a attachment that you'll submit, and in that attachment, based on the responses you put in there, we'll have a percentage of how many students are actually participating in blended learning versus all of your campuses. Points are there. And then secondly, out of those blended learning participating students, how many of them are meeting, percentage-wise, meeting high fidelity usage. So you'll report that in the attachment. There'll be a screenshot for that, and then we'll follow up with the vendors if needed. Secondly, then, for our finalists out of that, we'll have oral interviews. And in those oral interviews there, we'll have a couple of segments that we want to go through. One is alignment to the overall strategy, the grant to the district strategy, understanding of the operational shift and the requirements and plannings that'll be needed. What presence of existing practices and policies do you have that would align to this operational shift? Support from district leadership and school board, that's extremely important, as well as the awareness of this implementation and any sort of challenges that might come about. And then we do have a requirement that you engage with a technical assistance provider. So thinking through what's your history been with that already. So out of all of those things, you'll have those points there, and then we'll award accordingly. As I mentioned earlier in that attachment, this is just an example of what that attachment looks like. So we give you a scoring attachment to use for yourself to make your own calculations, and you can just submit that along with the screenshots from your supplemental dashboard. We don't have a requirement on which sort of products. It just has to be in that time range from last year. So that would be this previous spring, January to May of 25. And again, you can kind of see the example of what that would look like, listing your total enrollment and then total number of students participating in blended learning, and then how many of those students are meeting the metric and those percentages there. Biggest thing to include in your dashboard is noting that date range, the grade levels, so that they match the grade levels that you're submitting for your grant, as well as the total number of licenses versus the total number of students that are meeting the usage. For the timeline here, same timeline as academic, but the implementation is a little different. So this LASO 4 is only for the LASO 4 funding period for this first school year, 26-27. You have to pilot for each of the campuses that you list in your application, or number of campuses you list in your application. You have to have at least one grade level per campus. We do not dictate which grade level that is. Again, that'll be part of the planning process this spring of noting where the need is for you to have this operational shift. And then in the continuation year one, if your district meets all the grant requirements and you get continuation funding, you will then implement that by grade band. So if you're an elementary campus, K-5, you'll have at least 2 grade levels at math or 2 grade levels at reading or both. And then of course, middle school, 6th through 8th. And then you'll have that same implementation for year 2 if you meet grant requirements to get continuation for year 2. MIZ designation for those in the math cohort of strategic operations applies as well as it did for academic. And then a few things that fit within both cohorts here. So just want to list those out. One is application funding. So for those that have previously been in a blended learning, we've kind of changed it up a little bit to give you up to 3 years of funding now instead of the 2. So that could be more money that you can put towards your district and implementation. However, you do have to show at the end of each year that you're meeting the grant requirements and software fidelity usage. And so that's what this essentially is laying out for you, and the dates there that we'll put those there for you. The biggest thing is that you'll get your LASO 4 funding in year 1, year 2, 75% of that, and then year 3, 50% of that, because ultimately we want districts to be able to do this program at fidelity, but be able to scale it out on your own. So by the time you get to year 4, it's now just a part of your school system, funding all on your own, no longer needed for the grant. The grant is here to launch and start, not to continue on for many, many years. So these are your 3 years, and we'll slowly take push money away so that you're able to take on more of that role. So by year 4, it's now part of your school system. And then, as I mentioned there, this is just a funding formula. We do have it slightly different between academic and cohort. Both of them have an initial amount that we give, and then an amount per campus that you apply for, up to 5 campus maximum. and then money per student up to that certain maximum up to for each campus. So you're more than welcome to apply for more than 5 campuses, but typically your maximum award will probably somewhere cap out around that 5 campus maximum award there. And then again, academic grantees, your maximum award is 180,000 for this first year. Strategic operations, 310,000, because you do have other things such as stipends for teachers that need to be added to it. Year 2, same amount that you'll have for year 1, just at 75%, and then year 3, 50% of your year 1 award. As far as things in the funding formula that are allowable, the big things is your online curriculum implementation, whether that be the tier 1 or the tier 2, your design and implementation support. So thinking through maybe having trainings or having a technical assistance provider helping you through this implementation. Will have approved ones in the SAPL list. Your licenses, obviously, so any of your tier 2 licenses, we'll talk about the ones that are allowed here in a second. Personnel, the biggest part for this is you do need to have a project manager that is able to dedicate 50% of their time for the grant. This is a big part of the grant, especially for strategic operations, knowing there's a lot of moving pieces. And so there's going to have to be someone that can get from campus to campus and support those teachers on a weekly basis. And then additional implementation supports, whether that be devices, infrastructure, other things that you need to make sure you have a functioning grant. Overall commitments, I mentioned that just a second ago about the manager, but overall commitments there on the left, things such as your master schedule, stakeholder engagement plan, your BL model implementation, monthly classroom observations. All these things will be listed out, and we'll talk through in our planning process this spring. Your project management should be someone that has the flexibility to get from campus to support, but really shouldn't be someone in the superintendent's office. So the superintendent themselves or an assistant superintendent that finds themselves, there's a lot going on in the district. They can't really pull themselves away from that. We have noticed over the years that districts that tend to struggle, sometimes it's because they've just taken on too much, and you're in a role that really doesn't give you the time and flexibility to go and support at the campus level. Online curriculum, so that the tier 1 and the tier 2, obviously, and then for your operational shift, thinking through that overall large scale implementation. So what that means for the role and commitment, it's two. One, for both academic and strategic ops, is a project manager, 50% of their time, making sure that each parts of the grant are happening on a weekly basis. And then 2, in the strategic operations, there is a steering committee that you'll make a group this spring and then meet on a monthly basis starting the 26-27 school year. And there's more than this, obviously. You can see all the rest of them in the program guidelines. These are just kind of the big highlights here. Your assurances, a few of the things that we'll put at the beginning of the year. One is a technology audit. It's kind of a landscape analysis to think through as a district. What are all the softwares that we are paying for right now or this previous school year? Realizing that we may not even know that there's licenses that we're paying for at district level that other campuses are actually paying on their own. We've seen that happen before. Typically, this last year we did the technology audit. An average was anywhere between 50 to 80 licenses that a district was paying for. And oftentimes, really only 10, 11, 12 of them were actually being used as they were supposed to be used at the full campus level or district level. Many times, you might have a teacher that was able to get through a grant, a district license, but then they're the only ones using that thing. So thinking through those things there to start the year off in your planning. And then your fidelity of planning, execution deliverables once we get into the school year. And then one of the big assurances is you'll see in your application, you'll have to choose a BL model that you want to use, whether that be a certain grade level, a certain product, tier 1, product tier 2, and then a time commitment. So committing to one of those BL model options is a big assurance there. And again, you can look in the program guidelines to see all the rest of them. And mentioning that BL model commitment, so as we've gone through this and we've done a full year of strategic operations last year, one of the biggest pieces of feedback was like, a district really needs to see how does this dance between the tier one and the tier two work. Ultimately, the biggest piece that we've noticed is the time commitment, making sure in your master schedule that it lists out the time. So starting with LASO 4, we're going to have you opt into that early. Now we can make adjustments as we go, but the time commitment will remain the same on there. So for our academic cohort, you can see here, and again in your program guidelines, it's listed here. For K-5 math, it's Bluebonnet, a supplemental product. We're waiting for IMRA to get approved this next month, and then we'll give out all the approved products through IMRA, our ratio waiver list, or math supplemental. But it's a 90-minute time block. So what that looks like for the classroom is you do your 60 minutes of Bluebonnet with Fidelity, and then immediately you have a 30-minute lab rotation. And we'll show you an example of what that could look like, where you'll then spend your time with that software product, as we mentioned earlier, for teacher target instruction, half the kids, the other half of the kids, or the other group of kids on the tier 2 supplemental. 6-8 math, same way. The times are a little bit different there. 45 minutes Bluebonnet, 15 supplemental. We have a high school Algebra 1, which is really exciting. We haven't really done high school before, but we do have it for Algebra 1 now, 60 minutes. And then for K-5 reading, this is a very large chunk of time. Bluebonnet asks for 120 minutes, and so then immediately having that 30-minute block there. So we want to be upfront with this on this, because we know that it's sometimes in our mind we think, yep, we can do this, and then we actually get into the master schedule into next year and we go, oh, actually we can't do this. So being upfront now and choosing a model, getting with your leadership team and your campus leaders to determine what works best for you and if this is doable for you. For strategic operations, much the same. We're a little more flexible between the tier 1 and the supplemental. Again, noting because the main focus here is on the overall operational shifts. And so then those tier 1s could be a little bit more flexible there. So when you apply, or your superintendent applies, they will choose one of these models. And again, these are linked into the program guidelines as well as the application to look through and really think through which one fits our district best. The other thing that we listed is just a visual representation of what that 30-minute lab rotation could look like. Obviously, you could do more than 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is probably the minimum to make sure that you can get through that rotation each day. And so in this example here, we have a 90-minute lesson, 60 minutes with your tier 1 Bluebonnet, and then the teacher and students move into that lab rotation. You have two options in that. Option 1 is, I want to see all of my kids today, and so I'll do two 15-minute rotations. We can do that every single day of the week. Or option 2 is, I'm only going to see one group today, but I'm going to get 30 minutes with them, and then I'll rotate tomorrow and see 30 minutes there. We've seen districts that have done that on, say, like Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then Wednesday's a flex day, and then Thursdays, Fridays, or Monday through Thursday, and then Friday is that flex day to get to kids that that are still having trouble. And then, as always, ending with that exit ticket. Sometimes that exit ticket there is at the end of the Bluebonnet lesson. Sometimes at the end of the lab rotation. But this is just a visual for you. The state-approved vendor list, we've got many things that are already approved. There's a few things that are still in limbo as we're waiting for our technical assistants to finish up their applications, as well as our IMRA. But we'll have them all done before the grant starts, obviously. And then again, noting that we listed out between the academic and the strategic ops cohort. The biggest difference is there at the bottom right, the required technical assistance providers. That's only for strategic operations is a requirement. It's highly recommended for academic, but not a requirement. And then the other thing to note for you, we do have this language here for Texas. If you do a contract with a technical assistance provider or a supplemental, this language has to be in there. But a deep dive for our digital supplemental products. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, and it may change based on our IMRA results, but this is what we had last year. And so just to give you an idea of what this will look like, if you opt into a math cohort, you would choose a product based on the grade levels. We have some districts that would just choose one product, K through 8. You can do it by grade band. We had some some districts that did it by grade band. So we would have one product for K2, a second product for 3-5, and maybe even a third product for 6-8, noting that that's at the middle school in a different campus. The other thing you want to see here is that on the metrics, it does change between minutes and mastery. But these are our fidelity metrics that we have from last year. And then lastly, on the left there, we have some that are aligned to our ratio waiver list as well. So for those that are doing the ratio waiver list, as part of the House bill there, like this is, you can get more bang for your buck, kind of 2 for 1 if you're using it for blended learning as well. But we'll have the more updated version with grades and metrics before the grants get rolling in March. Same thing for reading. These are our 3 that we've had for last year, grade levels and metrics. You'll notice again the metrics, some go by minutes, as well as for Amira they have by mastery as well. Amira is one of our ratio waiver list folks. And then just to note, we did have some districts, or can have districts, that use a supplemental reading product that's not one of these 3 through a district selected rubric. So we'll provide you the rubric, you'll review it, and you can add in another product that way as well. And as we mentioned at the very beginning, we talked about that Math Innovation Zone designation. And so one of the benefits to that is we know that it's sometimes difficult, oftentimes difficult, for a district or a campus to start something new. And with that means that you might have a drop in this case, STAR scores for the state of Texas. And so to kind of give that relief, to try to innovate and not be afraid of those scores possibly dropping as you're getting early into that implementation, for districts that meet all of the requirements of the grant, including both like the grant implementation itself, as well as the software fidelity. We have the Math Innovation Zones law. It's a law written in statute there for us. Districts, a campus is not subject to interventions under the state accountability system for the first 2 years of designation. Again, you have to earn that designation every single year, but you will get 2 years of designation for that. Now, noting that this is a 3-year grant, so if you meet designation the first 2 years, you will not get the pause the third year because you got it the first 2 years. Sometimes we see a district that gets it the first year, didn't meet designation in the second year, but did meet it the third year. They'll get their second pause in their third year of the grant. So, but that's there to make sure that we're able to innovate and take those risks for kids. So moving through the path forward, Brian, you want to take those over?
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. So path forward, on the timeline here, we have our webinars going on right now. The application will close on December 3rd. We'll have, sorry, I skipped a couple things there. FAQs published in early November, and some office hours, so I encourage you to attend those if that does make sense for you. We will be doing the scoring, vetting, and interviews in December through January, and then are anticipating award announcement in February. And then have all the back end work with NOGAs and that type of stuff that will go through this spring. Let's see here. On the next slide, a couple things to call out. So if you're looking for the application, superintendents were emailed a specific link, a unique link to them on October 3rd. And if you need that resent, please use the link in these decks to request that, or on the LASO 4 website. A PDF of the application is posted on the website as well. So we encourage you to take a look at that ahead of going into Qualtrics, just so you have a sense of what you need to answer before jumping in. However, the application does need to be submitted through Qualtrics. You can't submit a PDF application. And finally, applications must be signed by the superintendent in order to be accepted. If you have any additional questions, please attend office hours. We have blended learning grant specific office hours on October 30th from 11 to 11:30. There's application support on October 27th and November 3rd. We'll also have updated FAQs posted on November 3rd. And you can email any application process or technical assistance with the application questions to lasso@tea.texas.gov. And then any grant specific questions, you can contact blendedlearning@tea.texas.gov. One note on change requests and declines. The time to think about if this grant is for you is now. It's not after you receive the grant. So changes and declines after the granting is actually done is not advisable. This is a competitive process that then inherently means that the person behind that district who was awarded should have gotten that award if you did not accept that award or would not have accepted that award. So we want to make sure that we're having the best bang for our buck, the best use of our dollars, the limited resources that we have for these grant scenarios. So make sure that you have done the thinking on the front end. And then it also could ultimately raise the school system's federal grant risk level in the coming year with declines. Finally, just an overview of some of the things that we were just talking about. Application window closes December 3rd. Program webinars right now through the 24th. There's the website to go to. We encourage you to share out these opportunities to other folks in your school systems. And then resources available on the website, including best fit guidance, grant one pagers, and then eligibility and prioritization guidance document. So check out the website, reach out with any questions to both LASO and Blended Learning Grant. And other than that, thank you very much for joining us today. And we are excited to see folks on the office hours and see applications coming in. Thanks.